A mother's worst nightmare comes to life when she makes the gruesome discovery of a dead body in her son's bedroom. We're taking a closer look at the murder of Hannah Collins and what we know so far about her disturbing case. Just after 1 a.m. on August 13th, a call came in to Los Angeles County Dispatch. A woman there told investigators she went into her son's room because of a quote, gas smell. Inside the bedroom, she made a grisly discovery, finding a woman's body wrapped up in plastic. Officials later identified the victim as 30-year-old Hannah Collins, who moved to LA from Mississippi back in June. Right now, Collins's cause and manner of death are still pending. It's also unclear how long she'd been in the suspect's bedroom or whether she knew him at all. The identity of her alleged killer has not been released either. Investigators only describing him as a 26-year-old Hispanic man. Right now, a motive in Collins's death is still unclear. Now, with so many unanswered questions in such a shocking case, we're turning now to Dr. Tim Gallagher, a forensic pathologist and medical examiner, to make sense of what we know so far. Dr. G, thank you so much for joining us today.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So to start, we still don't know Collins's cause or manner of death. Is it possible that her death wasn't even a homicide at all?
There's always that possibility. When we do autopsies, we always start with a open mind. So we have to allow for eliminating possibilities such as natural disease, such as an accident or suicide. Certainly if all of those things can be eliminated and the injuries are extensive enough, then we can rule in a homicide. But we need to go through the entire process before we come up with a cause of death and a manner of death.
I think something that sticks out with this case too is that officials say her body was found wrapped in plastic. We're not sure how long she was in the room for. So would that plastic wrap help or hinder in the investigation that medical examiners have ahead of them?
Well, the plastic wrap could mean a few things. We have had cases in suicide where people had wrapped themselves up in duct tape, in plastic wrap, and in a material such as that. And we need to see to the extent by which she was wrapped up. Was she loosely draped? Was she tightly wrapped? All of those things play into determining what the cause of death is. Another important factor is we need to preserve the wrappings as well. Plastic is an excellent source of fingerprints and DNA transfer. So when we come to the scene, we need to be sure that we do not contaminate any of those materials.
So one of the details we do know about this case is that the suspect's mother entered his room because she said there was a gas smell. What could that smell have been? Could it have been Collins's decomposing body?
It certainly could have been. When a body decomposes, it produces a lot of the same byproducts as you would find in natural gas, such as methane gas, butane gas, propane gas. So a lot of those chemicals are released by the body in the process of decomposition. So it is not unlikely that somebody can detect that odor, and which would lead them to a decomposing body.
Could the smell that the mother smelled, believing that it was gas, help medical examiners determine maybe how long she had been there or when she died?
Well, certainly that is a major consideration when we do these cases. We need to determine the approximate time of death. And in determining the approximate time of death, we look at the extent of decomposition. We know that at certain temperatures, bodies decompose at a very regimented rate. And if we can determine the cause, the extent of the decomposition, the temperature at which the body had been, then we can backtrack and determine at approximately what time the person became deceased. And in doing that, we can establish a timeline and rule in and rule out certain suspects that may be involved in the crime.
So as we're moving forward, what are the next steps for investigators as they determine whether her death was actually a homicide? You've alluded to several things here, but just as they're moving forward with this murder investigation.
Sure. So the next step would be to let the medical examiner or the coroner have jurisdiction over the body and have an autopsy performed. That way we can determine the cause of death and also the manner of death. The manner of death may be homicide, it may be accident, it may be suicide. And the manner of death will determine if charges can be brought up against a suspect once one is identified, if one is identified and brought to justice.
So, on the other side of things, as we're talking about the suspect, what's next in terms of the investigation surrounding any suspects in the case?
Well, the police do run their own investigation, but the medical examiner assists them with their investigation. And we can assist them with their investigation here, number one, by determining the approximate time of death, actually identifying the body, so positively identifying the body, which would also be an important role. Another role would be the collection of the trace evidence. Is there hair that is left by the offender? Are there fingerprints? Are there palm prints, blood prints, etc.? That can be traced back to a certain individual. And does the victim have markings on their body, whether it be stab wounds, wounds of strangulation, bullet wounds that we can use to trace back to a single suspect or list of suspects.
What's kind of interesting about this case is that there are still so many question marks, so many unknowns. Why is that? Is there a reason why these officials may be staying so tight-lipped?
There are. Police do not want to release too many details about the investigation for certain reasons. We want to make sure that when a suspect is identified, if there is one, that some of the information that is revealed at the crime would only be known by the suspect or the person offending on the deceased body or offending on the victim. So those details are kept secret or away from the public and only revealed during the interrogation of a suspect should one become identified.
Yeah, again, still a lot of unanswered questions, but Dr. Tim Gallagher, thank you so much for shedding some light on this case that we're still working to learn a little bit more about.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So far, no arrests have been made in this case, but Law&Crime Network will continue to follow it as it develops and bring you the latest updates as we have them. Reporting for Law&Crime Network, I'm Sierra Gillespie.